Imagine you are standing on the lip of a cliff at dawn. Below you, clouds unroll like silk scarves dyed rose and gold. Above, the sky is so clear it feels like glass you could press your face against. Your heart swells, so much beauty, it almost hurts. Instantly a reflex kicks in. Where's my phone? I need to capture this. And in that single heartbeat of reaching, the miracle shrinks to a rectangle of pixels, the colors flatten, the wind hushes, the awe is replaced by a low-grade anxiety. Did I get the shot? Will it get enough likes? And the moment slips away, unpocketed, and therefore somehow lost. We have all lived some version of this story. It is the modern parable of attachment, mist in the lens, rabbit crushed by too tight hands. Yet when Buddhism whispers, "Let go," most of us flinch. We picture a life stripped bare, monks in ochre robes, empty rooms, tasteless gruel. We mishear the invitation as eviction: abandon your family, your art, your dreams, your phone. But the Buddha never asked anyone to amputate the world. He asked us to stop clutching it until our knuckles whiten. The objects of our affection, mountains, music, lovers, memories, are not the problem. The problem is the invisible thread we tie around them that reads, "If you change, I suffer." This teaching is not a call to ascetic exile. It is a love letter to living wide awake. Letting go does not mean hurling your camera off the cliff. It means holding it so loosely that if the mist swallows the view before you can click, you still smile because you were there, lungs full of sky, heart stunned by color. The camera becomes a companion rather than a cage, a playful witness instead of a desperate collector. The same holds true for everything we cherish: relationships, careers, even our own bodies. When we loosen the death grip of mind, the world does not recede. It rushes in, vivid and intimate, the way cool air suddenly fills a room when a window is thrown open. Over the next few minutes, we will walk together through three simple stories: a mountain sunrise, a frightened rabbit, and the clothes already touching your skin right now. Each story is a mirror held at slightly different angles, reflecting the same quiet revolution. The moment we drop the demand that things stay, they begin to stay with us in a deeper way. You will not be asked to give up your life, only the feverish insistence that it must be freeze-framed to be safe. By the end, you may discover that letting go is not a loss but a return, a gentle homecoming to the only moment that was ever real, the one happening right here, right now, mist and all. Number 1. The Invisible Leash: How Our Grip Distorts the World. There's a moment in every childhood when we learn the word mine. It arrives with the force of a spell. A toddler grips a crimson truck, eyes blazing, and utters the incantation, "Mine." Instantly, the toy is no longer a collection of plastic and wheels. It is a territory, a fortress, a tiny kingdom under martial law. Parents smile at the ferocity, but something seismic has happened. The child has discovered the first thread of the invisible leash, an inner tether that will, if left unseen, grow long enough to wrap around lovers, careers, bodies, nations, and even the idea of who we think we are. Most of us never outgrow the leash. We just call it by grown-up names: security, ambition, identity. Buddhism's invitation is not to cut the leash with heroic renunciation, but to notice it's there at all. Because once you see the leash, you can't unsee it. And once you understand how it distorts every texture of experience, the letting go begins naturally, not as a sacrifice, but as a sigh of relief, so deep it feels like waking from a dream. The anatomy of the leash. Imagine the mind as a hand perpetually reaching, grasping, clenching, sensory contact, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought, triggers the reflex. Something pleasant appears, the aroma of cinnamon rolls drifting from a bakery vent. The hand of the mind closes around the scent and whispers, "More, stay." Something unpleasant appears, the screech of subway brakes. The hand now pushes, resists, contracts. "Go away, I can't bear it." Between the push and the pull, the world is stretched, warped, like light bending around a black hole. Neuroscientists call this effective forecasting error. We overestimate how happy or miserable future events will make us. The mind paints technicolor futures. If I get the promotion, life will finally feel safe, or charcoal catastrophes. If this relationship ends, I'll never recover. The leash yanks us out of the sensorial present and into these hallucinated tomorrows. Meanwhile, the actual cinnamon roll, the actual subway car, the actual person sitting across from us becomes a blurry background actor in the drama of our anticipation. The 5 knots in the leash. Early Buddhism maps the leash in granular detail. There are, according to the texts, 5 primary knots where the cord cinches tight. The knot of pleasure panic. We grip pleasure so tightly it suffocates. A song on repeat until the lyrics curdle. A first kiss replayed in memory until the living relationship feels pale beside the highlight reel. The tighter the fist, the faster the pleasure leaks away. 2. The knot of ownership. The subtle shift from "I enjoy this" to "this belongs to me." A sunset is free, borderless, impossible to package. Yet the moment we photograph it with the caption, "My view," the sky contracts into a commodity. The sunset doesn't change. Our lens does. 3. The knot of identity armor. We fasten experiences to the self like medals. The marathon medal becomes proof. I'm disciplined. The failed exam becomes evidence I'm not smart. Each label thickens the armor, making it harder for new experience to touch raw skin. 4. The knot of time gluing. The mind superglues past and future onto the present. An argument from 3 years ago hijacks a peaceful dinner. A fantasy about retirement hijacks the tongue's ability to taste tonight's soup. Chronological claustrophobia sets in. We live nowhere and know when. 5. The knot of impermanence denial. The most primal knot of all. Beneath every craving, every fear, thrums the whisper. I can keep this from changing, even as cells divide and die, as galaxies drift apart. We bargain with decay. The leash tightens into a noose around the heart. Micro-Memoirs of the leash. The blue dress. When my sister was 8, she coveted a cobalt dress displayed in a boutique window. Our mother saved for weeks, bought it for her birthday. The first time she wore it, she refused to sit cross-legged on the grass, terrified of grass stains. By autumn, the dress hung too small, never once stained, and never once enjoyed. The promotion that became a prophecy. A friend spent 5 years chasing a senior role. When the email finally arrived, "Congratulations, you're promoted," he felt a surge of triumph that lasted exactly 43 seconds. Then the mind rewound the tape. Now I have to outperform this level. Now they'll expect more. The leash had already fashioned a new collar. The phantom phone. You know the itch. You reach for your phone, certain you felt it buzz. The pocket is empty. The phantom vibration is the leash, tugging on the nerve endings of attention, a ghost limb of desire. Unhooking, the gentle science of seeing. The good news is that the leash is made of thought. Thought can be noticed, and what is noticed can relax. Here are 4 daily experiments to reveal the leash in action. Experiment 1. The cinnamon roll meditation. Next time you pass a bakery, pause. Inhale the scent. Notice the first mental image that appears, perhaps a swirl of icing, childhood kitchens, or the calorie count. Label it silently, planning, remembering, resisting, then return to the raw smell, sweet, warm, ephemeral. The leash slackens when you witness the story without boarding its train. Experiment 2. The traffic jam mirror. Stuck in gridlock. Feel the shoulders tense. Ask, what exactly am I gripping right now? Often it is the belief that the next lane is moving faster, or that I should have left earlier. Neither belief can be unwrapped and eaten. Notice the heat of should, the texture of frustration. The moment you name it, the leash lengthens, The jaw unclenches. Experiment 3. The 1-minute ownership audit. Pick up any object within reach. Your coffee mug. For 60 seconds, list silently every label attached to it. Mine, cheap. The one from college, needs replacing. Then hold the mug as if you just found it on an alien planet. Feel the weight, the cool ceramic curve. Labels evaporate, the mug re-becomes a planet in your palm. Experiment 4. The Impermanence bell. Set a timer to chime once an hour for a single day. Each chime, look around and name one thing that has changed since the last chime. The light outside, the level of water in your bottle, the expression on your face. The leash loosens when change is greeted as a dance partner, not a thief. Stories of slack. The surfer and the wave. A surfer once told me the ocean taught her non-attachment. "I don't own the wave," she said. "I borrow its shape for a heartbeat. If I try to freeze it, I wipe out. If I stay loose, I ride." The board is expensive, the ocean free, but the leash dissolves in motion. The grandmother sips teacup. My grandmother owned a porcelain teacup painted with violets. During wartime bombing raids, she carried it in her coat pocket, convinced that if the cup survived, so would she. Years later, unpacking boxes, she found it shattered. She laughed, a long, low, liberated laugh. "It kept me safe," she said. Until I didn't need saving. The leash had transformed into a talisman, then into dust, then into freedom. The paradox of open palms. Here is the twist that makes the mind real. The less we clutch, the more we experience. Pleasure does not diminish when loosened. It deepens. The cinnamon roll tastes more vivid when the mind isn't busy calculating tomorrow's gym penance. Love becomes wider when it isn't fenced by fear of loss. Even grief, when met without resistance, reveals itself as a form of love with nowhere left to land. The poet Rilke captured it. "We live our lives forever taking leave. The leash is our refusal to take leave gracefully." Buddhism's invitation is to practice the goodbye in every hello, to hold the world the way candlelight holds the wick, touching, transforming, never possessing. A closing ritual for today. Tonight before sleep, place one object on your bedside table, something ordinary. A pen, a shell, your child's hair tie. Sit with it for 3 breaths. Whisper, "You will change, and so will I." Feel the leash slacken. Notice what rushes in to fill the loosened space. Perhaps a breeze from the window, the distant sound of traffic, the quiet hum of being alive. That rush is not emptiness. It is the world stepping closer, no longer distorted by the grip. Number 2. Pleasure is not the villain. The real culprit lives in the small print. Pop quiz. Which of the following did the Buddha label dangerous? A fresh mango at peak ripeness, its sunset orange flesh dripping juice. A lover's fingertips tracing the inside of your wrist. A mountain summit at dawn, the sky igniting from indigo to molten gold. None of the above. If you answer D, congratulations. You just spoiled half the plot of every self-help book that uses Buddhism as a reason to cancel dessert. The mango, the fingertips, the sunrise, these are what early texts call kamagucha, the agreeable features of the world. They are not the problem. The problem is the microscopic clause we secretly add to every experience, and it must stay exactly like this, or else. That clause is what the Buddha called kamakanda, usually translated as sensual craving, but more accurately rendered as the itch to lock pleasure in place. It is the fine print that turns a summer peach into a hostage situation. Miss the clause and you end up with the popular caricature, "Buddhism hates pleasure." Read the clause and you see the real target. The mind's compulsive attempt to staple permanence onto a world allergic to staples. The mango that tried to be permanent. Consider the mango. You slice it, pop a cube into your mouth, and for 3 seconds, the universe tastes like a tropical vacation. Then the flavor fades. 2 strategies now compete for your attention. Strategy A. The loop. You bolt to the kitchen, slice another mango, then another. By the fifth mango, your tongue feels like sandpaper, and the original delight is a distant rumor. You have chased the ghost of the first bite all afternoon. Strategy B. The latch. You decide this mango is the mango. You photograph it, post it with the caption "Peak Summer Feels," and spend the next hour defending its honor against comments about better mangoes in Thailand. You are no longer eating the fruit, you are curating an edible trophy. Both strategies share the same root: the refusal to let pleasure be a passing visitor. Either we keep the visitor locked in the guest room, more mangoes, or we bronzed him on the mantle, Instagram immortality. In neither case do we taste the third, fourth, fifth seconds of the mango's subtle afternotes, the way sweetness gives way to citrus, then to the faint memory of grass and sun-warmed bark. The Buddha's radical claim is that pleasure can be fully tasted only when the mind drops both strategies, not because pleasure is sinful, but because claustrophobic pleasure is an oxymoron. A mango can fill the mouth, but it can't fill the future. The neuroscience of the claws. In 2016, researchers at Stanford ran a devious experiment. They gave subjects chocolate truffles while scanning their brains. In round 1, participants knew they could eat as many as they wanted. In round 2, they were told only a limited stash existed, same chocolate, same people, but the neural signatures diverged wildly. Round 1 lit up the ventral striatum, the brain's pleasure hub, like a carnival. Round 2 triggered the anterior cingulate cortex, the seat of craving and anxiety, even while the mouth was still full. The chocolate hadn't changed. The story had the claws, and this might disappear, had been injected, and it rewrote the brain's chemistry in real time. The researchers titled their paper "Scarcity Alters Neural Processing of Reward." A Buddhist could have saved them the fMRI budget. Scarcity is simply impermanence wearing a Halloween mask. The clause "it must stay" is the brain's attempt to edit out death, decay, and empty chocolate boxes. The edit fails, but the attempt itself becomes the new source of pain. The 3 flavors of the clause. Early Buddhism dissects the clause into 3 subclauses, each sneakier than the last. 1. The greed subclause. More, faster, again. Notice the way Netflix autoplays the next episode before the credits finish. The platform is monetizing the greed subclause on your behalf. 2. The ownership subclause. This is mine, therefore I must defend it. Think of the toddler howling when another kid touches his toy truck. Now scale it up. Adults arguing over whose beach sunset was better, whose vintage vinyl is rarer, whose trauma is more valid. 3. The freeze frame subclause. Don't change. This is the clause that turns weddings into performance art. The couple wants the vows, the weather, the guests' emotions locked into one perfect tableau. The caterer knows the truth. Someone's uncle will get drunk, the cake will tilt, and the sunset. Oh, that sunset will be 15 minutes early. Life refuses the freeze frame. Every spiritual tradition has wrestled with these subclauses. Christianity calls them the world, the flesh, and the devil. Islam calls them nafs. Buddhism just calls them kamakanda, the itch. The itch is not the mango, it's the demand that the mango last forever. The avant-garde of non-clinging pleasure. If pleasure isn't the villain, can it be an ally? Enter the Buddha's paradox. The more lightly you hold a pleasure, the more intensely you feel it. Athletes call it flow. Musicians call it being in the pocket. Buddhists call it appamada, non-negligent joy. Jazz pianist Keith Jarrett describes improvising as surfing on the edge of a mistake. He has no score, no safety net. Each note is born, blooms, and dies in the same breath. The result? Concerts that leave listeners weeping. The genius is not in clinging to the perfect phrase, but in letting it vanish so the next one can arrive. The same principle governs every first kiss, every sunset, every crack of thunder. When the mind stops auditioning for tomorrow's rerun, the present scene upgrades to IMAX. The mango becomes a fugue of flavors. The lover's fingertips become a telegram from the cosmos. Even pain, when met without the claws, reveals its hidden layer of poignancy, beauty so sharp it almost feels like mercy. Practical Lab. Rewriting the clause in real time. Here is a 48-hour experiment you can run without quitting your job or deleting Instagram. Hour 012. The Mango Protocol. Buy one perfect piece of fruit. Sit where you can see natural light. Eat one cube at a time. Eyes closed, tongue mapping texture like a cartographer. The moment the mind proposes a second cube, silently say, "Visitor acknowledged." Door stays open. Then decide, from open space, whether to eat it or not. Hour 12:24. The Screen Protocol. Watch one episode of a show you love. At the first itch to binge the next episode, pause. Ask, is the itch louder than the story? 9 times out of 10, the itch is background static. Let the silence settle. Then press play or walk away. Your choice, but made from clarity, not compulsion. Hour 24:36. The Conversation Protocol. Meet a friend for coffee. Notice when the mind leaps ahead to "what should I say next" to sound witty. Drop back into the sound of their voice, the steam curling from the cup. Let the conversation breathe. Marvel at how much more you show up when you're not auditioning. Hour 36:48. The Memory Protocol. Before sleep, recall one pleasure from the last 2 days. Instead of replaying it like a GIF, scan it like a living hologram, colors, smells, micro-sensations. End with the recognition. Gone. Feel the bittersweet ache, not as loss but as the afterglow of having been here. The long game, pleasure as meditation object. Advanced practitioners sometimes use pleasure itself as a focus for meditation. The method is scandalously simple. Take one pleasant sensation, warm sun on forearms, the hush of rain on a skylight, and rest attention there. When the mind tries to contract around it, don't let this end. Label the contraction, clinging, then relax the grip, and return to the sensation. Over time, the boundary between meditation and ordinary pleasure dissolves. Every sip of tea becomes a retreat center. Every breeze a Dharma talk. The ultimate plot twist. The Buddha's final word on pleasure is the most subversive of all. In the Sapayatana Sapayutta, he says the world's beauty remains just as it is. Translation: nothing is taken away. The mango stays sweet, the violin concerto stays sublime. What falls away is the small frightened claws that tried to shrink infinity into a cage. When the cage dissolves, the world rushes in, larger and more intimate than before. So go ahead, eat the mango, kiss the lover, watch the sunrise, just whisper at the edge of every experience. You may leave when you wish. In that whisper is the secret. The moment permission is granted, the visitor almost always lingers a little longer, glowing brighter for being unchained. Number 3. The Open Palm Economy. How to own without being owned. We live in a world that worships acquisition. Your phone chirps with flash sales, your inbox dangles early bird bonuses. Your social feed is a parade of keys to the new house photos shot from low cinematic angles. The subtext is constant: get it, keep it, upgrade it, or fall behind. And yet, every spiritual tradition whispers the opposite: hold it lightly, or it will hold you. Between these two voices, grab and release, most of us ping-pong daily, exhausted. Here is the third revelation in our series. You can possess things, roles, even memories, and still remain unpossessed. To practice this is to step into what I call the open palm economy, a way of living in which the hand is relaxed enough for gifts to land and relaxed enough for them to leave. 2,000 words ahead, no bullet point minimalism, no heroic downsizing, just a field guide to ownership that does not require amnesia about beauty, ambition, or love. Part T. Vertical bar. The inner real estate market. Picture an ordinary Tuesday evening. Layla, a product designer in Berlin, has just unboxed the limited edition sneakers she queued 20 minutes to buy online. The soles glow faintly under the kitchen LED. She posts a flat lay on Instagram, captions it "Grail achieved," then feels a small, almost imperceptible drop in her stomach. Nothing is wrong with the shoes. Something is wrong with the silence that follows the click. That silence is the first hint of inner real estate. The square footage of mind space now leased to the sneakers. Everything we own, or think we own, demands cognitive rent, maintenance, schedules, worry about scuffs, identity polish. Do these shoes still say the right thing about me? Buddhism does not suggest burning the lease agreements. It suggests reading the fine print. In the Patalaya Sutta, the Buddha compares a layperson to a man carrying a load of meat through a crowd of dogs. The meat is not evil. The dogs are not evil. What exhausts the man is forgetting he can set the bundle down whenever he wishes. Inner real estate, then, is the sum total of psychic square footage we hand over to our possessions. The open palm economy begins with an audit. Where do I feel the tug of maintenance, comparison, or fear of loss? The tug is not a moral failing. It is a signal flare revealing where the leash has tightened. Part 2. Vertical bar. The 4 moves of the open palm. There are 4 gestures, so ordinary they hide in plain sight, that convert ownership into freedom. They are not sequential stages. They are muscles to be flexed daily. The borrower sips mind. When my niece was 7, she borrowed a glitter pen from her classmate. She used it, capped it, returned it with a solemn flourish. The pen was never hers, so its sparkle never corroded into worry. Adulthood complicates the script. We sign 30-year mortgages and still behave as if the house is a borrowed tent. This is not delusion. It is sanity. Try this once a day. Pick one object within armsips, reach, a watch, a laptop, a car key, and silently label it on loan from the universe. Feel the micro shift in your shoulders. Nothing has changed, except the lease has been renegotiated from forever to for now. 2. The curator sips sigh. A museum curator does not own the Van Gogh. She stewards it, rotates it, protects it from UV light, and crucially prepares to let the next curator succeed her. Curatorship replaces possession with custodianship. Apply it to your living room. The couch is not yours. It is the current resident of a 3-quart 7-foot rectangle of floor. When the couch sags, you rehome it without melodrama. The story moves from "I failed to keep my couch perfect" to "the couch, and I completed a chapter." Custodianship scales. You can curate a friendship. How do I water this connection without fencing it? A talent. How do I offer it without branding it? Even a grief. How do I honor its presence without building a shrine that forbids tomorrow? 3. The regifter sips joy. In 2nd grade, I gave my best marble to a new kid. The marble was cat-eyed, swirling galaxies in glass. I expected heartbreak. Instead, I felt a weird helium lift in my chest. Neuroscience now calls this the helper's high, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin in cocktail form. Buddhism calls it dana, the practice of deliberate relinquishment that paradoxically expands the giver. Regifting need not be dramatic. Clear out one bookshelf. Hand a sweater to a shivering stranger. Tip outrageously. Each act is a vote for the belief that circulation, not accumulation, is the engine of abundance. 4. The inheritance clause. My grandmother kept a cedar box of letters from my grandfather. When she turned 80, she invited each grandchild to choose one letter to keep. "These weren't set mine to begin with," she said. "They were ours to pass through." The inheritance clause inserts a prenuptial agreement with every acquisition. I will enjoy this fully, knowing its ultimate destination is someone else's hands. Try writing a tiny note and taping it inside a beloved book. If you are reading this, the book has outlived me. Take it on new journeys. The note is a seed of impermanence planted in the very act of ownership. Part 3, Vertical Bar, the Shadow Inventory. We like to imagine our possessions are neatly cataloged in closets and hard drives, but there is a shadow inventory. The things we own that own us, the badge collection, job titles, follower counts, resume bullet points, each a badge stitched onto the ego's sash. The sash grows heavier until movement itself feels effortful. The museum of regret. The guitar never learned, the camera never used, the language app abandoned at lesson 3. These items sit on a shelf labeled Future Better May. Every glance whispers inadequacy. The security blanket. The extra freezer, the emergency Bitcoin, the unread self-help stack. Here ownership masquerades as prudence, but underneath thrums the ancient fear that the universe might run out of goodwill. The open palm economy does not demand that we torch the shadow inventory. It invites us to illuminate it with gentle questions. Does this badge still serve the person I am becoming? Is the guitar a promise or a reproach? What would happen if I spent one security blanket dollar on an experience right now? Part 5, Vertical Bar, the Economics of Circulation. Let's speak in numbers for a moment. An average American household contains 300,000 items. Storage unit revenue in the U.S. rivals the GDP of Iceland. Meanwhile, the second-hand economy, thrift, resale, peer-to-peer rental, is growing 11 times faster than traditional retail. Translation: the collective unconscious is already migrating from ownership to access, from hoarding to flow. Buddhism simply names the migration and offers ethical scaffolding. 1. Rent-own. Streaming music, tool libraries, car shares. These are not signs of spiritual decline. They are training wheels for the open palm. Every rental is a rehearsal for mortality. I will use this, then return it unbroken. 2. Quality. A well-made object used for decades and then passed on becomes a story, not clutter. A cheap object breaks and dies in landfill. The open palm prefers one sturdy cast iron skillet to 5 Teflon imposters. 3. Story, stuff. The most resilient currency is narrative. A family dinner set carries the story of every soup served. A handmade table carries the fingerprints of its maker. When the story is told aloud, the object becomes light enough to hand forward. Part 3, Vertical Bar, the inner firewall against FOMO. The fear of missing out is the Leash's latest upgrade algorithm. It whispers, if you don't secure this now, you'll lose your spot in the hierarchy of happiness. The open palm economy installs a firewall built on 2 mantras. Mantra A. There is enough. Not in the sentimental sense that everyone already has enough, they don't, but in the geological sense that the universe is an open system. Sunlight, creativity, goodwill. These are not zero-sum. Your neighbor's joy does not subtract from yours. It rehearses it. Mantra B. I am enough. Possessions often function as prosthetics for self-worth. The open palm practices the counterintuitive move, I relax my grip, therefore I am. Paradoxically, the more secure we feel internally, the less we need to fortify externally. Part 6, Vertical Bar, a 30-day micro-pilgrimage. You do not need to sell your house. You only need to walk the perimeter of your life and open a few windows. Week 1, the one in one out rule. Every new object that crosses your threshold must be paired with the exit of an old one. Feel the subtle tug of resistance. That tug is the leash revealing itself. Week 2, the borrow day. Once this week, borrow something instead of buying it. A ladder, a dress, a power drill. Notice the lightness when the item returns to its owner. Week 3, the story tag. Choose 3 possessions. Write a 1-sentence origin story on a sticky note and attach it. Example: bought in a thunderstorm after quitting a job I hated. Watch how the story loosens the item's grip on your identity. Week 4. The Passing Ceremony. Gift one beloved object to someone who will use it more fiercely. Hold a tiny ceremony. Light a candle, say thank you, release. The ceremony is not theatrical. It is the ritual acknowledgement that everything is already in motion. Epilogue vertical bar. What remains? In the open palm economy, nothing is finally lost. When the sneakers scuff, the couch sags, the marble re-enters circulation, something else expands the capacity to meet the next moment unarmored. The hand that once clutched now rests, upturned, on the lap. It can still catch rain, still cradle a child's face, still sign a mortgage. But because it remains open, the rain, the child, the house never become jailers. They become guests, passing through the foyer of a heart that has finally understood. Ownership is not the opposite of freedom. Practiced rightly, it is freedom in motion. Number 4. The last photograph. How to let beauty leave without losing it. There is a picture I have never taken, yet I see it more clearly than any photo on my phone. It was the moment a pod of dolphins arced beside the ferry at dusk, their backs lacquered in sunset copper, the sea so calm, it looked like liquid mercury. My hand was on the camera. I did not lift it. Instead, I watched the dolphins surface, exhale, and vanish. What I took away was not an image, but an ache so alive, it still visits me in dreams. This chapter is about that ache, how to meet the most luminous instants of our lives, then let them walk out the door without hiring memory as a bouncer. It is the 4th movement in our unspoken symphony. First we saw the leash. Then we tasted pleasure without fists. Then we learned to own without being owned. Now we face the final paradox. The only way to keep beauty is to allow it to disappear. 1. The museum that fits in a backpack. Most of us curate an invisible museum. Its walls are lined with freeze frames, the graduation stage, the hospital corridor where a child first cried, the airport embrace after 2 years of pandemic separation. We revisit these halls at 2 a.m. when sleep has gone missing. The plaques beneath each frame read, "Do not let this go." But museums, however beloved, are mausoleums when they imprison living moments. The smell of hospital disinfectant cannot stay suspended forever. The texture of a lover's sweater will eventually pill and fade. The moment we insist on permanence, beauty begins to die. So we build a paradoxical museum, the kind that fits in a backpack and weighs nothing. Its only rule is transience. Every exhibit is allowed to leave the moment it arrives. Paradoxically, this policy keeps the collection fresh. The dolphins I never photographed still breach nightly in my bloodstream precisely because they were never embalmed by a shutter click. 2. The chemistry of clinging. Let us zoom down to the level of synapses. When you see something stunning, a supermoon rising over the ridge, your brain releases a cocktail: dopamine, anticipation, opioids, pleasure, oxytocin bonding. It's nature's way of saying, pay attention, this matters. But the moment the mind whispers, I must keep this, the chemical recipe shifts, cortisol seeps in. The amygdala, sentinel of threat, starts scanning for how the moon might be taken away: clouds, bedtime, other people's taller iPhones. The supermoon is still 384,400 kilometers away, yet your nervous system behaves as if a thief has entered the room. Neuroscientist Judson Brewer calls this the craving mind. The brain mistakes the idea of keeping the moon for survival. The irony: the stress chemicals dull the very receptors that allow you to savor the moon in the first place. We grip beauty until its colors bleed. 3. The 3 deaths of a moment. A moment dies, 3 deaths when we refuse its departure. First death, the shrink ray. We compress the vastness into a souvenir. A 3-hour mountain hike becomes a single summit selfie. The wind, the thigh burn, the conversation with a stranger about altitude sickness, all erased. What remains is a pixelated icon, and icons cannot breathe. Second death. The loop. We replay the highlight reel until it frays. Think of a song you once loved, now over-listened until every chord feels like a rerun. The brain's hedonic treadmill turns miracle into muzak. Third death. The comparison trap. Every future sunset is measured against the best sunset ever in our mental vault. The sky tries its damnedest new pinks, rogue lightning, but it is judged against a ghost. Nothing real can compete with a polished memory. 4. The art of the gentle goodbye. There is an alternative. It does not require deleting photos or boycotting Instagram. It requires a subtle pivot. Document the moment, but do not arrest it. Photographer Sam Abell tells students to take the picture, then look longer without the camera. The second gaze is the true keeper. The shutter captures the light. The open eye captures the light within the light. One becomes artifact, the other becomes marrow. Try this micro-practice after any peak experience. First snowfall, surprise proposal, perfect espresso, pause for 3 breaths before reaching for the phone. In those breaths, whisper, stay as long as you like, leave when you must. Then photograph, post, or pocket the memory as you wish. The whisper is the difference between witnessing and kidnapping. 5. The alchemy of impermanence. Buddhist monks spend days creating intricate sand mandalas, then sweep them into rivers. Tourists gasp at the destruction. The monks smile. They understand that impermanence is not the enemy of beauty, but its secret ingredient. A mandala that endures would become wallpaper. A mandala that vanishes stays luminous, because it never overstays its welcome. We can replicate the alchemy in daily life. The dinner party. Cook an elaborate meal. At the end, light a single candle and watch the empty plates. Instead of mourning the feast's end, toast its mortality. To the soup that is now laughter inside ourselves. The evening dissolves into myth precisely because it cannot be repeated bite for bite. The love letter. Write a letter to someone you adore. Seal it. Burn it. The smoke carries the message. The ashes fertilize the garden. The letter survives. Not as paper, but as fragrance in the soil. 6. The science of bittersweet. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman distinguishes between the experiencing self, the one living the moment, and the remembering self, the one curating the highlight reel. The remembering self is a tyrant. It edits out boredom, stitches narratives, crowns winners. The experiencing self, meanwhile, is happy to sip tap water if the conversation is good. The trick is to keep the remembering self from staging a coup. One method: periodically uncurate your memories. Scroll through an old photo album and delete one image deliberately. Feel the tiny jolt. That jolt is the leash loosening. The remaining photos suddenly breathe. 7. The reverse bucket list. Instead of listing what you still want to see, list what you have already seen and are willing to let go. The smell of your grandmother's attic on a rainy July. The exact shade of turquoise in a glacier-fed lake. The way your father's voice broke when he said he was proud. Read the list aloud, then burn it safely. The act is not erasure, it is release. The memories do not vanish. They disperse like dandelion seeds, ready to sprout in unforeseen corners of your life. 8. The poetics of absence. There is a Japanese concept, mono no aware, literally, the pathos of things. It is the bittersweet awareness of the cherry blossom's brief bloom. The cherry tree does not apologize for falling petals. It celebrates by dropping them in a pink blizzard. We can practice mono no aware in traffic jams, in fading friendships. In the last page of a novel, absence becomes not a hole, but a window. Through it, we glimpse the vast, moving fresco of life. The dolphins I never photographed swim past that window nightly, sleek and free, because I never tried to fence the ocean. 9. A 24-hour exercise in exquisite release. Morning. Choose one beautiful object you see every day. Your coffee mug. The view from the kitchen sink. Spend 1 full minute admiring it. then say goodbye out loud. Thank you for today. I release you from tomorrow's obligation. Notice the flicker of resistance. That is the leash vibrating. Midday. Eat lunch alone without your phone. When the last bite is finished, close your eyes and watch the flavor vanish on your tongue. Grieve the vanishing for exactly 10 seconds, then smile at the space it leaves. Evening. Watch the sunset or the city lights coming on. As the colors change, narrate their impermanence softly. Now the gold fades to peach. Now the peach to bruised violet. Now the violet to charcoal. The narration trains the mind to accompany change rather than resist it. Night. Before sleep, recall a peak moment from your past. Instead of replaying it, imagine handing it back to the universe like a library book. Here I return the dolphins, the moon, the first kiss. Thank you for the loan. Drift off feeling lighter, not poorer. 10. The harvest of letting go. A month after the ferry ride, I found myself in a city park at twilight. A street lamp flickered on, illuminating a single maple leaf suspended in midair by an invisible spider thread. It spun slowly, catching orange light like a coin made of fire. My hand twitched toward my pocket, then relaxed. I watched until the thread broke, and the leaf sailed into darkness. The ache returned, but softer now, like background music. It was the same ache the dolphins left, distilled and portable. I realized it is not the thing we lose that matters, it is the capacity to be pierced by beauty and to remain open after the piercing. The final teaching is embarrassingly simple. Beauty does not need our protection. It needs our unprotected gaze. When we give it that, it leaves, yes, but it leaves behind a quiet radiance that no photograph can fade. Number 5. The quiet engine, how ordinary, acts, become the practice of letting go. We have walked through the myths, tasted the mango, opened our palms, said goodbye to sunsets. Now we arrive at the place where the teaching stops talking and starts living, in the small, unadvertised choices that stitch one day to the next. This is not another lofty principle. It is a set of quiet engines you can switch on anywhere, anytime, without anyone noticing. Think of them as hidden pedals on the bicycle of daily life. Press them, and the ride keeps moving. Forget them, and the chain rusts in the garage of good intentions. 1. The doorframe pause. Every doorway in your house is a free monastery. The moment your hand touches the frame, stop for a single exhale. Ask, what am I carrying that I don't need right now? It might be an argument from breakfast, a worry about tomorrow's meeting, the phantom weight of your phone in a pocket that is actually empty. You don't have to solve the cargo, just notice it. 90% of letting go is recognition. The other 10% happens by itself while you walk through the doorway. 2. The dishwasher mantra. Washing dishes is a cliché of mindfulness, yet we rarely do it right. Instead of counting breaths, try counting releases. Pick up a plate. Release the film of sauce. Pick up a glass. Release the ring of coffee. The sponge is the teacher. The soap is the sermon. By the time the sink is empty, you have practiced impermanence 30 times without once using the word. 3. The one-line journal. At night, instead of listing gratitude or tomorrow's tasks, write one line about what you allowed to leave today. Let the red leaves fall without photographing them. Let the awkward silence stay awkward. Let the email remain unanswered until morning. The line is not a trophy, it is a breadcrumb. Over weeks, a map emerges, the geography of your loosening grip. 4. The stranger sips face. Once a day, look, really look, at a stranger's face for 3 full seconds. Not the outfit, not the phone, just the face. Something softens. The mind's habitual storyline, what does this person think of me, dissolves in the simple fact of shared humanity. Letting go of the stranger's imagined opinion is rehearsal for letting go of your own. 5. The impermanence reminder. Choose one object you use daily. your toothbrush, your house key, your subway card, and scratch an almost invisible mark on it, a dot, a tiny X. Every time you touch the mark, remember, this too is halfway to the landfill. Not morbid, merely factual. The dot is a gentle poke from reality, small enough to fit in a pocket. 6. The breath between replies. When someone says something that hooks you, a criticism, a compliment, a political grenade, train yourself to take one silent breath before answering. That breath is a subway door held open, just long enough for the urge to storm in or out to reconsider. 99% of regret is generated in the space we didn't give ourselves. 7. The weekly one-way walk. Pick a route you know by heart to the corner store, around the block from bedroom to kitchen. Once a week, walk it one way without retracing your steps. Take a different loop, a new staircase, even if it adds 6 minutes. The mind learns in the body that the same destination can be reached by letting go of the familiar path. 8. The soundtrack fade out. Create a playlist of one song that reliably moves you. Play it, but set a timer to fade the volume to 0, halfway through. Notice the ache when the music evaporates mid-phrase. Stay with the ache until it becomes spacious. You are teaching your nervous system that beauty can leave the room and still belong to you. 9. The second use. Before discarding anything, glass jar, torn jeans, stale bread, pause and ask, what else could this be? Turn the jar into a vase, the jeans into a gardening apron, the bread into croutons. The question is not about thrift, it is about curiosity. Curiosity is the solvent that loosens the glue of single-use life. 10. The micro-goodbye. Every night, close the curtains or switch off the light and whisper goodbye to the day. Not a dramatic speech, just 2 words. Thank you. The day leaves the room, you stay. That is the entire practice of letting go condensed into a breath and a half. The engine room of ordinary time. These 10 micro-practices are not accessories to the spiritual life, they are the spiritual life wearing everyday clothes. They fit between emails, between subway stops, between the kettle boiling and the child calling for a lost shoe. They do not ask for extra hours. They ask for extra presence in the hours you already have. Over months, the quiet engines accumulate torque. You will catch yourself releasing a snide remark before it leaves your mouth. You will watch a parking ticket flutter under the wiper and feel a flicker of amusement instead of rage. You will stand in a funeral home and discover that grief and gratitude can coexist without contradiction, like 2 notes in a jazz chord. And one day, maybe in the produce aisle, maybe at a red light, you will realize that letting go is no longer something you do. It is something you are, a body breathing, a mind unclenching, a heart spacious enough for everything to pass through without leaving scars. That is the final secret of the quiet engine. It runs on nothing you can buy. It costs nothing you can lose. And once it starts, it never stops. The last light. A parting whisper from the Buddha. Friend, if you have walked with me to this sentence, you have already practiced everything I ever taught. Notice the grip, taste the mango. Open the palm, let beauty leave. And hardest of all, wave goodbye to yesterday's face in the mirror. There is nothing more to add, only something to remember. Every breath is a doorway, and no one can hold a doorway. Step through, and the life you feared losing finds you on the other side. If these words have been useful, treat them like the raft in the old story. Use them, then set them down and keep walking. And if you ever need a reminder, return to any doorway, any dish, any stranger's face. The teaching is always waiting in plain sight. May you travel lightly. May you arrive often. May the path itself become the home you were looking for. If you set like more quiet engines for daily life, share this teaching with one person who forgets they are already free. Subscribe to keep the river moving. And step outside. The next lesson is already in the air, You're about to breathe.